Hello and welcome to our conversation about taking steps to improve equity, diversity, and inclusion in our places of work and communities. It is brought to you by the Greater Parkland Regional Chamber of Commerce and Town of Stony Plain Family and Community Support Services. Although with tons of information on the internet, businesses struggle with getting started with building an ED&I program that suits their needs. Building an ED&I program might sound too daunting. So in today's conversation, we'll talk about an important early step, and that's to demonstrate leadership commitment. The conversation takes place between myself, Mike, Renata, and Ada of BadaB Consulting. At the end, we'll also take a moment to tell you about our recognition badges that help you take steps and demonstrate your commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. Now, let's get talking.
One of the first steps of building an ED&I program is for leaders to show and demonstrate commitment. There are several components to it. First of all, having a mission statement is important. Let me share with you an example from Hilton Hotels and Resorts. Diversity is at the core of our vision, mission, and values. We're committed to an inclusive workforce that fully represents many different cultures, backgrounds, and viewpoints. Our global brands provide meeting places for people from all walks of life to connect, creating a welcoming environment for all.
I like Hilton's example. Hilton further acknowledges that accountability starts from the top. Leaders provide ongoing support and commitment to diversity and inclusion through a variety of channels. For example, the president and CEO chairs the Hilton Executive Inclusion Council. Hilton also holds its leaders and managers accountable through organizational objectives that measure their own performance against their diversity goals. It's also important that our leadership groups have some experience of their own of diversity.
I definitely agree with all you've said there, Renata, that Hilton's strategy really is to leverage and promote diversity through a framework of culture, talent, and marketplace initiatives to foster innovation and create a globally competitive business. And clearly, Hilton is leading the ED&I practice. This is all great. Now, Ada, you'd mentioned that there are several components for leaders to demonstrate their commitment. And we just talked about the mission statement and leadership accountability. What else is there to discuss?
Good question, Mike. In order for ED&I initiative to work, businesses should treat this initiative just as other strategic business objectives, allocating budgets and resources. According to a recent research, 2/5 companies globally have increased their budgets for ED&I programs. A study by the Society of Human Resource Management reported diversity department budgets at Fortune 1000 companies average around $1.5 million per year. The range for diversity department budgets was from $30,000 to $5.1 million. When diversity was housed in Human Resources Department, the average annual diversity budget was just under $240,000. Of course, each company is unique. Some common budgetary items include, first of all, people who will lead the development and the implementation of the program, such as the Chief Diversity Officer, Human Resources personnel, or a small team. Second, marketing and branding and talent attraction account for a large portion of that budget. And third, followed by learning and development and employee resource groups, community events, and of course, work-life balance, flexible benefits offerings. And of course, we would suggest to work with your own limits, budget for a manageable number of action items, for example, 2 or 3 objectives for a year. So do what makes sense for your organization.
Yeah, and the third component is to build some fundamental infrastructure. For example, building an ED&I strategy that aligns with your own business strategy. Again, for ED&I initiatives, to show its impact, this needs to be treated as any other strategic business objective.
And other important pieces of infrastructure that I can think of are policies on respectful workplaces, investigative procedures, and well thought out recruitment processes for staff, volunteers, contractors, and let's not forget board members.
That's so right. Let's also not forget about providing continuous learning opportunities, inclusive benefits offerings, accessible workplace infrastructure, and recognition of achievements.
Okay, let's not share too much information to make the audience feel overwhelmed. A great place to start now is to communicate to the teams to share their leadership ED&I goals and any initial steps taken. And also make sure that they know why it's important to the company. Transparency and involvement through the process is important for all for that buy-in.
Okay, let's wrap up our conversation by talking about two simple things that people can do. Number one, self-test your decisions and actions for fairness and inclusion. For example, refining your own vocabulary and amplifying use of words that encourage respecting, valuing, hearing, and including others. And number two, support your workplace's ED&I initiatives by giving active participation and sharing feedback. Top leaders' buy-in and your buy-in is important. That was a pretty good conversation. As we wrap up this session, I'd like to take just a minute to let you know that we offer a badge recognition program that is focused on supporting organizations in the early stages of action on equity, diversity, and inclusion. There are 6 badges available: leadership and capacity, accessibility, staffing, compensation, performance excellence, and learning. For each, we have a list of research-based practical indicators, and you tell us how your organization is fulfilling several of them. Then we have a confirmation meeting and award the badge. There's lots of flexibility built in, and the point is to inform and recognize your first steps on the journey of meaningful equity, diversity, and inclusion. Contact information for Ada, Renata, and myself are on screen. Please reach out to any of us or the corporate office to talk more about equity, diversity, and inclusion and how we can help you. And thanks to our partners, the Greater Parkland Regional Chamber of Commerce and the Town of Stony Plain Family and Community Support Services, who are advocates of equity, diversity, and inclusion.